we can be called the sons of God. God has given us the ability through Jesus to be children of God, to be born into a different plane. This birthing, when you're born, you receive a last name, you have fingerprints, you have an identity. When you're born in God, you're given a new identity. You're given a new thought process. You're given a new way of doing things. You no longer have to process life through sin, but now you can process life through Him. So when family issues show up, you can now say, Mom, I know that we've gone through some things, but I'm now processing our relationship through Christ. And Jesus says things like, love those who have despitefully done wrong against you. Pray for them. Jesus says things like, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. So when you get into an argument with your parent, and you're like, well, they're just wrong, I want you to look in the mirror. But you can actually do that when you're processing things through the holiness. Are we listening? When you're processing things through the holiness that is God. But see, when we're processing things through sin, we want to get mad, we want to get frustrated. We want to make people feel the pain that we experience. What's amazing to me about Jesus is that Jesus took on our sin, and at no point is Jesus like, now, Father, give them the pain I experienced. God doesn't do that. Imagine if it was like, to be saved, you got to get nails in your hands and nails in your feet, and crown of thorns in your head. Folks would not be saved. Y'all be like, Mom, you really trying to go to church though? Like that elder Wayne is crazy. That man said, get some nails and not on your fingers, like through your hand. Jesus is not like make them feel that pain. As a matter of fact, Jesus is on the cross, right? Jesus has been beat up. Jesus has been whipped. Jesus has been punched. Jesus had hair ripped off of his beard. Jesus has nails put into his hands, nails put into his feet. Jesus has had a crown of thorns put on his head. He's hanging on a cross. Arms like this, can't breathe, can't really lift himself up, bleeding out his back, got splinters. And what does Jesus say? Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. When you process things through this new birth, your thought process changes. The way you approach things changes. And you don't ever have to live within the context of sin again. Sin only leads us to drama. Sin only leads us to hard times. Sin only leads us to depression. Sin only leads us to evil. But God always leads us to good. The Bible says, thanks be unto God, who always causes us to triumph in His name. God does not lose. He doesn't. He doesn't lose. So Jesus says, unless you be born again, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. You get to be born through Christ and come into the kingdom the right way. Come into the kingdom through Him. And this new birth does a tremendous amount for us. It gives us the ability to be born outside of the issues that we've dealt with. Every person in this room raised their hand and said that they have issues. Let's do it again. How many of y'all got issues? Raise your hand. Every person in this room. But when you're born again, you no longer have to live through the process of those issues that you had. You no longer have to deal with life through the issues that you had. You can now deal with life through the issue solver. See, it's one thing when you got to do math problems, extreme math problems, and you ain't got no calculator. You be sitting like, when you got to do cosines and tangents, and you be sitting like, stop playing. Give me a calculator that says COS on it. Y'all know what I'm talking about? How many of y'all took geometry? How many of y'all took geometry? Can you imagine having to do cosines and tangents and all that mess without a calculator? I look at Chinese kids and be like, y'all smart. Somebody sitting like, team no calculator, I can do this. Divide by 64 squared. I'd be like, no, 64 cosine. The answer is 12. It's one thing to have to do math without a calculator. It's another thing when you got the calculator. It's one thing to live life and you ain't got the issue solver. Jesus is the issue solver. And you don't have to live through those issues anymore.